Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone, depending on which part of the world you are joining us from. Thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar. The partnership manager at Calqulate, and also the director of Startup Grind, on which platform we are having this amazing webinar today. And with me, I have Niko and Sampo, who will be our amazing speakers for today. Just a few details about our speakers. Niko is the CEO and co-founder of Calqulate. He has been a SaaS CFO advisor working with like tech startups for many years. He has over 20 years plus experience. And with that, we could say that he has a lot of experience on this. He understands what it means to see when money is being burnt and how to, burn it in a sustainable or scalable way. So today he's going to be sharing all of those insights with us. And on the other hand, we have Sampo, who has worked with startups, agencies, as well as a freelancer for over 6 years now. He's a product and growth strategist at Calqulate, and he has also been directly involved in, a lot of our marketing expenses being done in a sustainable way. So he's going to be sharing all of those with us, so we could learn how to actually burn money, but to do it in a sustainable way. With that being said, I'm going to shut up now and hand it over to the expert who is going to be taking us through this journey for today. I would like to bring on stage Sampo to take over from here.
Thanks for the introduction, Kelvin, and happy to see you guys, everyone over here. So as Kelvin already said, I work as a product and growth strategist at Calqulate, and I've been involved in other companies as a marketing specialist and marketing strategist. So I'm quite well versed with asking the finance team for money and whoever is in charge for that. So the fact of the matter over here is that as a growing company on its way to scale, it is inevitable that you will use money or some other sort of resource to acquire users, customers, and build up visibility for your company. And it's going to require resources, money for paid media, or time for owned and earned media. So I think I would like to have a bit of a discussion with Niko relating to this. So from my side of view, I would probably want to spend as much money on growth as I can, because that's going to reflect in the future earnings, but it's always sort of an ongoing discussion, let's say.
Yes, and this little video explains the topic quite well. And good morning, everybody from California as well. So here we have the head of growth who wants to burn money, and the CFO is shouting, "Why are you burning money?" And then this is the usual discussion between the marketing department and the finance department in a fast-growing startup. Because the marketing department is asking for money to do X, Y, Z, and the finance department is asking why, or what are you going to get with that money? And then the communication needs to be quite structured between the two departments in that sense. So then when the marketing department says that I need 100,000 to generate leads, then the finance department is going to ask, okay, what does your sales funnel look like? What are your conversion rates? How many deals are you going to close and when? And how much revenue are you going to generate? What is the upfront billing going to look like? What are the cash flows going to look like? And what is the CAC payback time going to look like? So when the marketing team goes to the finance team, they need to have all these answers ready. And instead of just saying, I want 100,000, they should say, I am going to grow the revenues of the company by 20%, and the cash flow of the company will look like this. And here's my conversion rates. And in order to do all of that, I need 100,000. So usually the discussion should be kind of like turned around.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about today as well.
Yeah. sometimes there's a bit of a harder discussion to be had if the growth / marketing team wants to spend money on branding efforts and things like that, and investments that will pay up in the future, but that's where expertise comes in, and a bit of more discussion to go as well. But yeah, for the next thing, so money being burned profitably equals growth engine, and your growth engine is usually produced from 4 different parts: by stickiness, which is basically having a good product, having good customer support and customer success; virality, so sharing between people, so that's basically building and participating in communities to achieve word of mouth. There's other like sort of viral things you can do, such as hosting competitions, but all of that sort of comes to like sort of community building. Then there's organic reach, which could be seen as search engine optimization, your own media, so basically a website, things like that, and PR. And then, of course, paid acquisition, which is basically giving someone else money to bring you people, bring you eyes, so be it TV or Google or Facebook. And there is a reason why growth engine is called an engine. It requires fuel. It needs to be built. So you need money and resources for building it, optimizing it, and keeping it running. And can we next? Yes. And a best way to understand how your growth engine and your growth efforts are going is LTV to CAC formula. It's an amazing formula which basically tells you how successful you are. Are you getting good customers for a good price? And the magic formula you usually go for is 3-1. And if that's what you're going for. And it might differ in some other industries, but if you're working in digital industries, it's usually 3-1, and that should cover all of the expenses with your LTV. And yeah, and that you show that ratio to your CFO. You go to them and say that I give me $1 and I will give you $3 back. And basically, if you can say that, that's usually an extremely good justification for why you exist within the company and why you are burning that money. And there's a couple of others. It also works as a tell. So if your ratio is higher, so basically you have, let's say, 5-1 LTV CAC, that means that there's still more money to spend. So let's focus on growing as those investments bring you more money in the future, and it's you have achieved an optimized like growth level, and you can spend more money. And let's say if you're at LTV 2-1 or LTV 1-1, you have to start asking some questions, like if it's is there something wrong with your marketing efforts? Are you using the wrong channels? Are you targeting wrong people? Do you have too much people working on things, or are your efforts just not turning out? Or if your product is not as good as you thought it would be. And next one. And we come to inbound and outbound. So inbound refers to having your customers come to you. So this refers to your earned and owned media. And I would say, so basically, if someone writes a story about you, or if you write good content, or are in social media and sort of like earn your own audience, or if you own your own audience, you have people in your email lists or people visiting your website, or maybe you have your own podcast. And this requires a lot of investing in content and your social media presence, etc., to attract those customers. But then when you have them in your own bag, you don't have to invest that much of money on them anymore. And then you can engage them with marketing automation and have your customer success talk to them. This takes time and money to build, but it will usually convert to earnings as the time passes. And then there's outbound, which is going to your customers, so usually paid. And it's also an investment from your earnings, but it's more of a continuous investment to keep going. So basically, as you give money to Google and Facebook or to TV channels, or pay your salespeople to contact people, that's going to bring more costs all the time. But I suggest that you still keep doing this. Inbound usually cannot run everything by itself. And cold calling, emailing, direct sales, and advertising are always working subjects, even though some people say cold calling is dying. I personally don't think it's going anywhere. But always remember to keep track of your KPIs. Next one. And a lot of the times when you're working as a marketing professional or growth professional, you love taking looks at marketing performance metrics, such as how is your click-through rate doing? Are your ads performing well? Are you getting leads, etc.? But you should also pay attention to those financial analytics, as Niko specified earlier. It's great if you're getting a lot of leads, but let's say the leads you are getting are not that good. And even if they convert to customers, they quit after like one order or after 1 month. And you see that, okay, this is not performing as well as I did, even though these marketing performance metrics are looking excellent. Keep looking at those financial metrics. What you get under the line is always the most important thing as a marketer. And then with financial analytics and attribution, you will be able to decide what you're going to put your growth investments on, which can be new staff. Which type of staff? Do you need a new copywriter? Do you need someone to optimize your performance marketing spend? Do you need someone to write you content? Do you need to get a podcasting studio? Where are you advertising? Which advertising channels are you doing? Is Facebook working better? Is Google working better? And most importantly, if you have financial analytics, you can look, is Facebook or Google bringing in better customers? Or did this one content piece perform exceedingly well, and we can attribute well-paying customers to that? Should we, in that case, start making more of that type of content or invest even more to inbound? And yeah, before I give the floor to Niko, I want to mention Chopsticks. And the interesting thing is that we once had a meeting where we were discussing sort of like metrics pairs and what we could call them. And Chopsticks was one that a colleague of mine brought up, because metrics alone, like chopsticks, are quite useless. You don't want to stab your noodles while you're eating, and you certainly don't just want to look at one metric in just one metric alone, because the way KPIs and metrics bring the most value is when you look at them together. So as an example, the one that I already talked about, which is the LTV to customer acquisition cost. And I forgot to say that, but LTV refers to lifetime value and CAC refers to customer acquisition cost. And alone, they turn to alone KPIs turn to vanity metrics in isolation, and it's hard to stab noodles. And yeah, Niko, I would love to give the floor to you.
Good morning, everybody. We'll be looking at the most important sales and marketing KPIs from a financial point of view, and then basically building a growth strategy and looking at cash flows, looking at sales forecasting, revenue forecasting, basically starting from the sales and marketing metrics like new leads, sales cycle length, conversion rate, average revenue per account, sales pipeline value, and the number of new customers. As we discussed earlier with Sampo, basically all of these have a financial consequence as well. So marketing teams should not be only concentrating on generating leads. They should more think about what's in the bottom of the funnel, how much revenue those leads are going to generate, and when and what kind of cash flows, etc. Because companies' goal is to grow their operations and grow their revenue, but they need to do that from the source, basically by generating leads and then converting those leads throughout the sales funnel into closed leads. And then now let's look at the first one here specifically, which is the new leads. Basically, sales funnel. Well, you can imagine that the sales funnel look like this here, and on the top you have the new leads, basically that your sales and marketing teams are generating, and then little by little the funnel gets narrower, and in the bottom you have your closed leads that will actually then generate revenue and cash flow. But every sales funnel basically starts from the top. It starts from new leads, and this is usually the kind of expense heavy part of the sales funnel. Somebody needs to generate those leads. So if you're a sales driven company, then basically you have lead research specialists who are basically qualifying customer lists and building contact lists and so on, and therefore generating leads. If you're a marketing driven company, you're probably spending money on Google ads, LinkedIn ads, and so on, and therefore generating leads with ad spend. And then both of those strategies mean a lot of expenses. Either you're paying salespeople or you're paying marketing channels in order to generate those leads. But that's really the top of your funnel. The more leads you have, more likely the more revenue and cash flows you have in the end as well. And if you look at Chopsticks metrics, we need to look at the lifetime value versus customer acquisition costs here, and we'll be looking at also revenue forecasting and cash flow forecasting, because that's really the bottom part of your funnel where those things start. And let's move on to the next item here. So we discussed quickly about sales funnel. So sales funnel usually looks like this. And then you have different stages in your sales funnel. For example, from lead to contact, from contact to demo booked, from demo booked to second demo, and then in the end you have the closed deal. So then the better conversion rates you have in each step of the funnel, your funnel actually becomes wider in the bottom. But the worse conversion rates you have, the narrower your funnel starts. So you've generated a lot of leads, but then you're closing very few deals in the bottom. So this is the conversion rates in your sales funnel is actually their measure of efficiency between the different stages, and it also measures the forecastability of your sales funnel, because the whole idea is that your sales funnel becomes predictable. If you, for example, want to generate 1,000 leads, then you need to work your way down to closed deals in a predictable way, so that you can forecast your new revenue in 2 months, your new cash flows, etc. And then the kind of Chopsticks metrics here would be new leads and the sales cycle length, and then also MRR forecasting, because you want to make that predictable as well. Let's go to the next slide here. And if the conversion rate measure the efficiency of your sales funnel, the sales cycle length measures the velocity of your sales funnel. Because then if you have a predictable sales funnel and then predictable conversion rates, you want to make the sales cycle length also as predictable as possible. Because we used the previous example, if you generated 1,000 leads this month and burned a lot of money in generating those leads, and then you have a predictable funnel that you basically know how many deals on average you're closing, you also want to know when you're closing them, so that you can then forecast your revenue next month and cash flows in 2 months, etc. So that adds a lot of forecastability here. So we get to predictable revenue forecasting, predictable cash flow forecasting, and then when you know basically when you're closing those deals, you can then do better CAC payback time forecasting, etc. And then you know when to burn money and when you're actually getting that money in as well. Let's go to the fourth example here, and then basically new customers is in the bottom of the funnel. So then that's the most important part of the finance team's sales forecasting and revenue forecasting, because really that's the only thing that really interests the finance team. Okay, are we forecasting to get 5 new customers next month and 10 new customers the following month? What is the average revenue? What are the billing terms? How much money should I, include in my cash flow forecasting, etc. And the board has given a target to grow the company 20% this year. Actually, are these? I'm doing something funny with my computer. Sorry about that. So the board has given a target to grow the company by 20%. Are these sales forecasting and the new customer counts actually going to match that target? And then, so based on the average revenues and so on, are we going to reach those targets? So again, we get to sales forecasting here, we get to CAC forecasting, etc. And this is really the most important part of that financial forecasting. Let's hop on to the fifth example, which is the sales pipeline value. So this is one of the most important things overall what the finance team should be looking at from the sales teams and marketing teams work, because the sales pipeline is basically divided into different stages of the sales process. For example, first you have the leads, then the next stage could be a meeting booked, and often there is a second meeting that needs to be booked, and then you have the sales, the closed deal. And then it depends how many deals you have with what kind of values in different part of the stages. So to get to the total sales pipeline value, because actually all of those stages have a different probability of closing the deal. In the beginning of the sales pipeline, which is the top part, there I wouldn't give it a big probability for those deals to close. Only when you get towards the bottom that your probability gets higher. And then when you calculate the total sales pipeline value multiplied by the probabilities of the different stages, you get to the value that the finance team could forecasts, and then divide that amount to the revenue for each month going forward. And so this is key in doing financial forecasting as well. And this links to so many things, like it links to your sales team headcount, it links to your return on ad spend, your total customer acquisition costs, and then the closed deals linked to your sales forecasting and MRR forecasting as well. Let's go to the last example of these. So the sixth example, which is the average revenue per account. So this is one of the key units in lifetime value calculations and also sales forecasting, because if you know how many deals you're closing, let's say next month, then you need to also estimate what's the average revenue per closed deal, so that you can actually do your financial forecasting better, and you can measure that, okay, were my marketing efforts and sales efforts actually profitable based on the average revenue of the deals that I closed. And the more you can break this down into channels and different customer segments, the better. Because if you know that, for example, LinkedIn ads are working, but Facebook ads are not, or if big customers are much more profitable than small customers, then it's just better to concentrate on LinkedIn ads and big customers. If the LTV to CAC ratio is better, if the CAC payback time is lower for those kind of customers, so that you can actually spend your money in a wiser way when you know how the growth metrics, ARPA, etc., work in different segments and different channels as well. So this is really key in doing analytics, especially financial analytics for a startup. Let's hop on to the next slide here. And as Sampo was mentioning, it's usually not very smart to look at KPIs as a single unit. So I would advise not to look at just CAC or just LTV or just net revenue retention, try to look at them in pairs or as a sequence. And we've been talking about LTV to CAC ratio. That's an excellent ratio to look at. So that's a pair. And when you take the CAC payback time as a new dimension in it, then you understand, okay, how quickly is my customer acquisition cost paid back? And when you're looking at LTV, for example, then it's good to understand, okay, how is that LTV evolving over time? Are my current customers that I've closed the deals with earlier, are they actually growing in revenue over time, or are they decreasing revenue over time? And then understand what's the billing frequency for the deals that you're closing, so you can understand, when is the cash coming in. For example, is it going to come in 15 months or 12 months, or are you going to get 12 months upfront billing right now in order to make the company cash flow positive very quickly? So these are all interesting dimensions in the financial analytics linked to growth metrics as well, and it's good to look at all of these as a big picture and not as an individual unit. Let's go to the next slide here. We'll be looking at 5 different examples here. So we're looking at 3 core growth metrics. We already discussed LTV to CAC, so I'm going to skip that. We'll be looking at CAC payback time and then net revenue retention, NRR, more in detail. And then if we go to the next slide, we'll be also talking about 2 very important profitability metrics, the gross margin and EBITDA. EBITDA meaning earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. So let's look at these 5 items more in detail, because they link to basically to all the sales and marketing analytics, and these kind of moves towards the terrain of financial analytics. So Sampo already mentioned the LTV to CAC ratio, that the healthy ratio is 3 to 1 or more. So you spend $1 and then the customer is bringing in $3 back. So it's a good investment. So let's hop on to the next example here. So CAC payback time is one of the most important cash flow metrics and growth metrics for a company, because even if your LTV to CAC ratio is healthy, your CAC payback time ratio might not be very healthy. So then it's actually good to get both of them to healthy levels. So imagine if you now, according to this example, if you've now spent $600 in acquiring a customer, so you're out of pocket $600, so you needed to finance that somehow. And if the customer is paying small amounts on a monthly basis, then you can estimate that, okay, after some time, I've actually recovered that early investment of 600, and then any cash flows that come after that is actually profit for my company, because I paid back the customer acquisition cost. So the shorter time basically you can have to pay back that customer acquisition, the better. Usually you can do that with say quarterly payments or annual upfront payments. Then sometimes your CAC payback time can even be negative. So imagine if you've now on average paid $600 to acquire a customer, but they pay you $1,000 for annual upfront license fees, for example. It's a very healthy ratio, because you can use that extra $400 to acquire a new customer, for example. So try to make the CAC payback time as short as possible. Let's go to the next example, which is net revenue retention here. So we've been looking at LTV to CAC ratio. We've been looking at CAC payback time. And then net revenue retention basically is looking at your current customers and how their revenue is evolving over time. So basically, without acquiring any new customers, how's your revenue going to either increase or decrease from your current customer pool? So it looks at your current revenue. It looks at all the upgrades and downgrades and churn in your current customer base, and then compares it to your initial revenue And then if your upgrades are actually higher than your downgrades and churn, means that your net revenue retention is more than 100%. So the idea here is that you might lock in your customers with quite a low revenue at first, and then try to kind of get that LTV to CAC ratio healthy, and also that CAC payback time healthy, and then you basically sell more to your customers, so that the revenue that they pay you is increasing all the time. And that's basically it's an ideal situation to create an upselling path to your pricing. So instead of spending a lot of money on acquiring new customers, you can just increase your revenue from your current customer base. So you get like double benefit here. You get new customers and you get more revenue from current customers as well. That's the ideal situation that every company should target getting towards. So let's go to the next slide, which is we're getting to the profitability metrics here. So gross margin is basically one of the key profitability metrics that measures the profitability after cost of sales. So we basically take the total revenue that your customers have paid, and then we minus the cost of sales. Cost of sales basically are the expenses that are production expenses. They can be, for example, like transaction fees for a tech company. They can be hosting fees, customer success expenses, some expenses that directly relate to generating your revenue. And when you deduct those expenses from your revenue, you get to gross margin, basically. And for a SaaS company, for a tech company, the ideally the gross margin percentage should be somewhere between 70 and 90%. And your revenue should be growing faster than your cost of sales. So ideally, the gross margin should be, as you scale, it should actually get better. For an early stage company, it's okay if the gross margin is in some cases even negative if you've made high investments into building a customer success team or something else. But once you scale, it should go towards 90%. And then let's go to the next slide. We'll be looking at a profitability metric, which is either meant for a little bit later stage companies or then for a bootstrap company. So EBITDA means basically earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. And it usually tells if the company is cash flow positive in their operation. So kind of ignore, in this case, all the interest that the company is paying for loans and taxes and depreciations and so on. Just basically is looking at all the operational cost, the cost of sales, and then are you generating enough revenue to cover your sales and marketing expenses, your admin costs, your customer success expenses, etc. That's your EBITDA. So after those expenses, then you're looking at, are you still cash flow positive and profitable here? And then we go to the next slide over here. We can look at two different scenarios. We can look at the bootstrap company and we can look at a VC-backed company. So if you're a bootstrap company, you probably want to target being an EBITDA positive company, so that you're actually generating cash flows, and then you don't run out of cash. Because if you burn too much money, you don't have the investors to actually give you more money all the time. So you have to become cash flow positive yourself with your operations and with your sales, and that usually means that you can grow more linearly because you don't necessarily have that early investment into growth, and then you need to get your growth metrics really kind of well aligned, and then you still have to be EBITDA positive. Then this usually means that you can grow more linearly. Whereas a VC-backed company, they can just get their growth metrics healthy, and they can actually be EBITDA negative as well, because they can burn a lot of money, invest a lot in sales and marketing. They can invest a lot in, for example, product development, and then they try to conquer a market. And then basically they're cash flow negative all the time, for at least for the first several years. And the idea actually is that they're EBITDA negative as well because they're investing so much in growth. So a VC-backed company would be looking at mostly like LTV to CAC, for example. Is that healthy? They don't necessarily care about cash because they have a lot of money from investors, so they might not be looking at CAC payback time that much. It's nice to have, but for example, they then target also a positive net revenue retention because that means high growth as well. So VC-backed companies are usually looking for growth. A bootstrap company is looking more like cash flow positive and survival, and then more linear growth. These are the two big differences when you're looking at EBITDA over here. And let's go to the next slide here. So we'll be there's 3 key takeaways that I would like to mention here. So then burning money is essential for a tech startup, especially in the beginning. But then you need to do it in a sustainable way, and looking at your financial analytics and growth metrics together, so that you're burning money in a healthy way. And even if you're burning money to actually grow your conquer the market, or if you're burning money in the beginning to build a product, you still need to do it in a sustainable way. And then depending whether you're a bootstrap company or a VC-backed company, then you probably have 2 different directions to follow. But you need to be looking at your cash balances all the time and cash flow forecasting, because if you're burning money in a careless way, you might be running out of cash very soon. And then cash is really king in startups. So then you would need to target getting upfront payments from customers and get as short CAC payback times as possible, especially for a bootstrap company here. So then that's why I would advise to look at both marketing analytics, financial analytics, and the cash flow dimension as well for almost everything that you do, so that you measure that, okay, we have still money on the bank in 3 months and 6 months and so on.
For the audience, we have a couple of slides, a couple of articles on our academy that talks about literally anything you can think about in terms of finances. So I would encourage you to head over to calqulate.io and just go to the blog part of things and just check out which topic interests you, and just read as much as you can, educate yourself as much as you can. And if you have any follow-up questions, or maybe if you want to have like a some sort of session with someone from Calqulate, or if you feel that the tool is something that could help you in what you're building, then feel free to reach out to any one of us on the team, and we'll be happy to help. With that being said, we've come to the end of today's webinar. Thank you so much, Niko and Sampo, for your time and for the detailed explanation. And then in terms of the webinar, we have the slides and the recording. We'll share with you guys via email, the email that I used to register for this event. And if you have any questions around finances, you know where to go now. With that being said, I would like to end this session by wishing everyone a lovely day. If your day is already ending, a lovely end of the day. If your day is starting, have an amazing day. And see you guys in our next event.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.